We measure ourselves by likes, shares, reviews. We value the reactions of others. 2,000 years ago, the Stoic philosopher Epictetus saw this. He said, "We are in too great a hurry to claim the good opinion of others." And we value ourselves on that opinion more than our own. That ancient warning might be the key to freedom now. Seeking approval is the fastest way to lose your autonomy. It's a form of self-enslavement. The Stoics understood this. We'll look at their core principles, the crucial dichotomy of control, the liberating concept of externals, and the true nature of freedom, which has nothing to do with popularity. By the end, you'll have a framework, a way to reclaim your inner sovereignty. To stop trading your peace for philosophy from ancient Rome diagnosed this problem that defines our digital age. And what's the first step to breaking the cycle? Stoic freedom starts with a distinction. It's a split between two categories, what's up to you and what isn't. Epictetus begins his handbook with that. He says some things are in our power and others aren't. In our power are our opinions, our impulses, what we want, what we do. Everything else is not in our power. The opinions of other people, our reputation, the results of our work, the past, the future, whether people like us, that's the dichotomy of control. It's a practical tool. It maps where your mental energy goes, and that's why seeking approval is so costly. When you want someone's approval, you're putting your sense of worth into the column of things not up to you. You're handing the keys to your peace of mind to an external judge, a judge whose verdict you can't control. Your freedom disappears. You've made your state of mind depend on something outside. Something unstable, something unpredictable. Think about it like this. You work hard on a project. You share it with a colleague, hoping for praise. They give a short, critical comment instead. If your well-being is tied to their approval, that one comment can ruin your day. It can fill you with doubt. It can steal your motivation. Your emotional state is held hostage by a factor you don't command. That's the loss of freedom happening right then. Now contrast that with applying the dichotomy. The comment itself is external. Not up to you, it exists, but your judgment of that comment is up to you. Your decision to see it as useful data or as irrelevant noise. Your choice to continue your work with purpose. Those are entirely within your power. Your inner citadel stays unshaken because you never mortgaged it for praise. So pause, consider, what are 3 things you currently seek approval for? Maybe it's the likes on a post, validation from a parent, the respect of a peer. Now place each one in its category. Is this thing truly within my power? If the answer is no, you've found a leak in your personal sovereignty. You've found where you're giving your freedom away, and this leads to something deeper. More subtle, the Stoics argued that things like reputation aren't just outside our control. They're ultimately indifferent to our happiness. They called these things externals. And mastering our relationship to externals is where real freedom is forged, unshakable freedom. Your reputation is like the weather. It doesn't make you better or worse. It's just a condition outside, sunshine or rain. That's the Stoic idea of indifference. Things like praise, blame, fame, obscurity, wealth, poverty, even health and sickness. They called these externals, and they're indifferent to your moral worth. They aren't good or bad in themselves. What matters is only one thing: your virtuous use of them. Your character, your intentions, your actions taken with wisdom and justice. It's a radical shift. The loud applause of a crowd is no more a measure of your goodness than a gentle breeze. And harsh criticism is no more a measure of your failure than a sudden downpour. They're simply events, data points in the environment. They are not verdicts on your soul. Seeking approval makes a critical error. It takes an external, someone else's opinion and treats it as if it were a genuine good. as if it were the prize. You organize your life around obtaining this prize you cannot control. You become a servant to its unpredictable delivery. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor, constantly reminded himself of this. He wrote in his private journal that the applause of the public is just the clapping of tongues, and that in a little while you will be forgotten, and the people praising you will be gone too. He wasn't being cynical, he was being free, detaching his sense of purpose from the roar of the crowd, which he knew was fickle. He anchored it instead in his duty, his reason, his own actions. That's why the example of Cato the Younger is so powerful. A Roman senator known for his stubborn integrity, he opposed Julius Caesar's rise, standing for the old republic. Caesar won, the public mood shifted. Many who once admired Cato then saw him as a relic, an obstacle. He was scorned, yet in his final act, he took his own life in a manner consistent with his principles. Refusing to live under a tyrant's rule, the point isn't the method but the mindset. His worth in his own eyes was internal, based on his unwavering commitment to his virtues. Public opinion had swung against him, but he did not swing with it. He saw that opinion as an indifferent. It could not touch the core of who he was. So bring this to your own life. Recall a time you felt slighted, overlooked, criticized, a promotion you didn't get, a snub at an event, a harsh comment online. Sit with that memory, now apply the lens of the indifferent. That event, that other person's opinion, was an external, like weather, it happened, but your judgment of it, your emotional reaction, that was yours to shape. Did you, in that moment, mistakenly treat their disapproval as a true bad, as a mark against your worth? If you can see that now, you can begin to loosen its grip. You can place that memory and all future slights in the proper category, not as attacks on your value, but as neutral events to be met with your own virtuous response. That's how you stop the leak, how you reclaim the territory of your mind. And once you stop chasing the mirage of external validation, a question emerges. What are you actually left with? What is this inner citadel, this self that needs no applause, actually built from? The Stoics had a very specific answer, and a very demanding one. Living for approval is like wearing a mask, and after a while it fuses to your skin. You forget what your own face feels like. It's a slavery to the eyes of others, a prison built from your own constant monitoring. You start to live your life as a performance. Every decision, every word gets filtered through an imagined audience. What will they think? Will this make me look good? Will it be accepted? That performative life creates a deep, quiet anxiety because the audience is fickle. Their standards are always shifting. True freedom, the Stoics said, is the opposite of this. It's the ability to act from your own reasoned choice, from your own character. Not from an anticipated reaction. It's the power to say, this is what I believe is right, and I will do it, regardless of the applause or the silence that follows. Seneca saw this clearly. In one of his letters, he writes about the folly of being troubled by gossip. He asks, why are you upset that someone spoke ill of you behind your back? Would you be upset if they had spoken ill of you to your face? The point is profound. The opinion itself, whether whispered or shouted, is an external. It has no power to harm you unless you grant it that power by valuing it. He warns against living for the crowd. The man who delights in the applause of the rabble must also be pained by their criticism. You can't have one without the other. When you seek their approval, you automatically sign up for their disapproval. You hand them the remote control to your emotions. You can see this in the modern ritual of a social media post. Think about the mental process. You have an experience, a thought, a moment, but before sharing it, you pause. You consider the caption, you filter the image, you think, will this get enough likes? Will it fit my curated aesthetic? Will it invite the right kind of comments? In that moment, you are not sharing for connection. You are performing for validation. You compromise a piece of your authenticity to fit a mold you believe the audience desires. The act is no longer yours, it belongs to the anticipated reaction. That's the fusion of the mask. The performance becomes the person. So how do you begin to peel it away? The Stoic prescription is action, not reaction. Act from virtue for its own sake and release your grip on the outcome. Here's a small, powerful challenge. Today, perform a single, genuinely kind act and tell no one. Hold a door for a stranger with no one else around. Send a supportive message to a friend expecting nothing in return. Complete a task with excellence even if no one will notice. Do it simply because it is good to do. Then, sit with the feeling. That quiet, unadvertised satisfaction is the taste of authentic action. It's action divorced from the eyes of others. It is yours alone. In that space, the mask loosens. You remember what it is to act, not to perform. And this practice, this reorientation from external reward to internal integrity, points toward the ultimate Stoic goal. A state of being so grounded in your own nature that the opinions of the world simply wash past you, like wind against a mountain. The approval you want rests on something you can't see. You're chasing a kind of phantom. It's a reflection of someone else's inner world. Their opinion of you isn't a clear window into your worth, it's a mirror. A mirror of their own history, their biases, their fears, their limited understanding. To stake your happiness on that is an act of profound uncertainty. You're building your house on sand, sand that shifts with their mood, with gossip they hear, with personal prejudices they hold. Epictetus gave us a tool. He said we are disturbed not by things but by the views we take of them, but you can extend that outward. We are disturbed not by other people, but by the views they take of us. Their view is just a view, a perspective filtered through their own lens, a lens clouded by experiences you didn't share, judgments you can't control. To let that dictate your inner state is to hand the steering wheel to a blindfolded passenger. History shows this. Think of Johann Sebastian Bach. In his own lifetime, in his own town, he was seen as old-fashioned. A competent but unremarkable craftsman, his more modern sons were considered the brilliant stars. Public opinion at the time overlooked him. Yet today, his work is considered some of the most profound humanity has ever produced. The opinion of his contemporaries was a product of their taste, their trends, their moment. It wasn't a verdict on the eternal quality of his soul or his art. His value was internal, rooted in his dedication. The world's recognition, centuries later, was just a delayed echo of a truth that already existed. So bring this home. Think of one person whose approval you deeply value. A parent, a mentor, a boss. Ask yourself, do their values truly align with yours? Are their judgments always wise, always fair, always free from their own insecurities or outdated beliefs? Often, we seek the good opinion of people whose internal compass we wouldn't choose to follow. We want them to validate a path they themselves don't understand. That's the core of the illusion. You're seeking a stamp of approval from a source whose currency you wouldn't actually spend in your own life. When you internalize this, a weight lifts. That need for specific approval begins to soften. You see it for what it is, an external event, a data point in someone else's mental landscape. It informs, perhaps, but it does not define. And this creates a new space inside, a space of self-reliance, but this raises the most practical question. If you're not acting for the applause and you're not crushed by the silence, what's left to motivate you? What fills the vacuum when the chase for approval ends? The Stoics had a clear answer, a powerful one, and it's the final, most liberating piece. That like has a hidden cost. Every time we choose approval over our own inner sense, we're making a trade. We're giving away a piece of our integrity for a moment of social comfort. It feels minor at the time, but the debt to your own character adds up, and it's enormous. True Stoic freedom isn't just ignoring opinions, it's integrity in action. It's acting from your nature, from your virtues, especially when the room is silent. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, be like the rock the waves crash over. It stands unmoved and the raging sea falls still around it. He wasn't talking about stubbornness, he meant integrity. The rock's nature is to be solid. Immovable, it doesn't try to become water to please the waves. Your nature, guided by reason and virtue, is your rock, and each time you soften your stance or dilute your truth or stay silent to calm the social waters, you erode that solidity. You become more like shifting sand, shaped by every opinion that passes by. Think about a common situation. A team is discussing a project. The approach shades an ethical line. It's not blatantly wrong, but it bends the truth. The group consensus is building. The boss seems pleased. Speaking up would create friction. It might mark you as difficult. So you stay silent. You trade your ethical unease for group approval, for professional safety. In that moment, what did you lose? Maybe the immediate conflict. But you gained a quiet, corrosive loss, a loss of self-respect. You have to live with the person in the mirror who knew the right action and chose against it. That internal conflict, that split between what you know and what you do, is the opposite of the Stoic ideal, the ideal of a unified self. The Stoics called this living in accordance with nature. Your rational nature knows the just thing. To act against it is a kind of self-betrayal, and no amount of external applause fixes that inner rift. The praise you get for going along feels hollow. Because a part of you knows you didn't earn it for being you. You earned it for wearing a mask, so make it practical. Think about the last week. Was there a moment, however small, where you made this trade? Maybe you laughed at a joke you found offensive because others were laughing, or you nodded along to an opinion you disagree with just to avoid an argument. Or you didn't voice an idea in a meeting, fearing it might sound foolish. These are the microtransactions, the tiny surrenders of authenticity, and over time they build a life lived for an audience. The way back isn't about being blunt or contrarian. It's about gentle, firm alignment. It starts with awareness. Before you speak or act, pause for a heartbeat. Ask a simple, internal question. Am I saying this because it is true and kind and necessary, or am I saying it because I want to be seen in a certain way? The answer will guide you. Acting from the former is integrity. It builds your inner citadel stone by stone. Acting from the latter leases out a room in that citadel to public opinion. This commitment to integrity is what makes a person unshakable, because when your actions come from a deep, consistent core, you are no longer performing. You are simply being, and in that state, a liberation happens. You're free from the exhausting work of managing perceptions, free from the anxiety of the next review. This is the freedom the Stoics promised, not freedom from others, but freedom within yourself, regardless of others, and that final, unwavering state has a name. They called it the ultimate goal of a philosophical life. Freedom is reclaimed by changing your standard of judgment. You shift where you place your evaluation. You move it from public opinion to your own reasoned choice. The Stoics had a word for this. They called it your Prohairesis. It's your moral character. Your faculty of deliberate choice. It's the captain of your inner ship, and its freedom is absolute. No one can force you to judge something against your will. No one can make you value a shallow compliment over a principled action. That power is entirely within you. The freedom they promised is aligning this inner captain with virtue instead of the loudest voice in the room. Epictetus called this the inner citadel. He said if you guard your judgments, no external event can breach your walls. Criticism can't enter unless you open the gate. Praise can't inflate you unless you decide it means something about your worth. The defense is your own rational choice. Now, a practical contrast. Imagine you share an idea at work and a colleague dismisses it sharply. The old script plays, they hate my idea, they think I'm foolish, I've lost their respect. Your emotional state is dictated by that external verdict. You feel small, anxious. Now engage your Prohairesis, your faculty of choice. Run the Stoic assessment. Their sharp dismissal is an external event, not up to me. My judgment of it is entirely up to me. I can choose to see it as useful feedback if there's a kernel of truth. I can choose to see it as a reflection of their bad day if there isn't. My worth isn't on the table. My commitment to contributing ideas is unchanged. I control my response. With that shift, the emotional storm calms. The criticism becomes data, not a decree. You remain in your citadel, unshaken. This is the Stoic anchor, your own reasoned choice. It's what you use when the world pulls you. So, a simple exercise to forge that anchor. Take a moment and write down your core principles. Not what you should value, but what you, in your quietest moments, truly hold dear. Is it honesty? Kindness, courage, diligence. Write down 3 or 4. These are your anchors, your internal standard. The next time you feel that anxious tug, that need for approval, don't look outward. Look at your list. Ask, is my action aligned with my principle of honesty? Is my silence a betrayal of my value of courage? Let that internal measure guide you. Not the imagined applause. You begin to act from integrity, not performance. A profound calm follows that kind of action because you're no longer waiting for a verdict from strangers. You've become your own judge, and this practice of self-governance leads to the final, most serene state. A peace that doesn't depend on anything the world can give or take away. That inner citadel gets built with daily mental discipline. You could rehearse not having the approval you want. The Stoics had an exercise for this. They called it Premeditatio Malorum. The premeditation of hardships. It wasn't pessimism, it was a kind of vaccination. If you vividly imagine potential setbacks, you drain their emotional power. You see you can endure them, you see life goes on, and you can use this for the fear of disapproval. Seneca wrote about preparing for adversity. He said we should anticipate the general conditions of life, not the specifics. That fortune might take our possessions, our friends, our reputation. By thinking on this, we strengthen the mind. We aren't caught off guard. We realize these aren't true evils, but part of being human. We can apply this to social adversity. Imagine the very thing you fear, not mild critique, but strong public disapproval. The goal isn't to make yourself anxious. It's to walk through the scenario in your mind and find the solid ground that's left after the imagined storm passes. So try a practical exercise. Close your eyes. Picture a scenario that's important to you. Maybe you're presenting a new idea to your team. You've worked hard, you believe in it. Now imagine the reaction. Not applause, imagine silence or direct, sharp criticism. A colleague calls the idea unworkable. Your manager dismisses it. Feel that initial sting. Then stay with it, breathe. Ask yourself what in this scenario is truly within your control. Your preparation was within your control. The clarity of your presentation was. Your honest intent to contribute was. Those things remain untouched by their reaction. Their opinions, their dismissals are external events, like weather passing through. Your worth, your capability, your commitment to doing good work, these aren't diminished by their momentary judgment. You can still act with virtue. You can thank them for the feedback, consider it, and decide your next steps with reason. You are okay. The ground beneath you is still there. This mental rehearsal does something. It detaches the emotional charge from the outcome. When you've already faced the worst-case social scenario in your mind and found your footing, the actual event loses its terror. You've already proven to yourself you can handle it, that your peace doesn't depend on their validation. So here's a prompt. Sometime today, take 2 quiet minutes. Choose one approval-seeking scenario that causes you anxiety. It could be posting a personal piece of writing online, asking for a raise, expressing a dissenting opinion to a friend. Now vividly visualize it going poorly. See the negative comments, feel the rejection. Then gently shift your focus. Write down in a journal every single aspect of that scenario that would still be within your control. Your effort, your honesty, your courage in speaking, your ability to choose your response. This list is your anchor. It's the map back to your inner citadel when the world feels disapproving. By practicing this, you aren't building walls, you're building an unshakable core, and from that core, a new kind of action becomes possible, one that is truly free. The Stoics said you should love criticism. That's the full reach of their idea, Amor Fati, loving your fate. It's embracing whatever happens, not just putting up with it, but accepting it actively. And that includes the most personal things, like how people see you, their praise, their indifference, their sharp criticism. To practice Amor Fati with other people means welcoming even criticism as the raw material for building your character. It's the final step, really, in being free from what others think. Marcus Aurelius kept returning to this. He wrote that an obstacle to action actually advances the action. What's in the way becomes the way, and he applied that to difficult people. He said a person who does wrong is doing wrong to themselves, but for you, they become an opportunity. They're like a training partner for your patience, for your forgiveness, for your steadiness. In his view, a malicious person isn't a curse on your day. They're a gift to your character. They give you the resistance that lets your integrity get stronger. That changes the whole landscape of social life. The colleague who undermines you isn't just an office problem. They're the whetstone you use to sharpen your composure. The online commenter full of negativity isn't just noise. They're a test for your empathy, for your discernment. The friend who forgets to thank you isn't proof of your worthlessness. They're an invitation to practice generosity without needing a receipt. Every slight, every lack of approval gets reframed. It's no longer an attack you have to defend against. It becomes fuel for the inner fire of your virtue. There was a Roman teacher, Musonius Rufus, a Stoic philosopher. He was exiled over and over for his principles, sent to harsh, remote places. Once he was banished to a barren Greek island. The social disgrace was total. Exile meant being cut off, scorned, forgotten. But when his students finally found him there, what was he doing? He was teaching. He'd gathered the local people and was discussing philosophy, living his purpose with the same dedication as if he were in Rome itself. His social standing had been obliterated by an external decree. But he treated that obliteration as part of his fate to be loved. It was the context where he could now practice resilience and teach it. The disapproval of the powerful became the backdrop for his commitment. So applying this starts with a shift in your internal narration. Next time you face criticism or feel the sting of being overlooked, pause. Before the old story of hurt starts, insert a new question. Not, why are they doing this to me, but what virtue does this moment make possible? If the criticism is unfair, it makes patience possible and clear-headedness. If it's accurate but harsh, it makes humility possible, a willingness to learn. If it's a lack of recognition, it makes doing good work for its own sake possible without any reward. That's how you love that piece of your fate. You don't have to enjoy the feeling. You just recognize its role as your training ground. You thank the circumstance silently for showing up to today's practice session. Because that's what it is, your character's daily workout. So here's a prompt. How could the next piece of criticism you receive serve as training? Which specific muscle of virtue could it strengthen? Your patience, your courage to speak kindly in return, your humility to listen. Asking that is an act of alchemy. You take the base metal of social friction and turn it into the gold of self-mastery. The world's opinion stops being a verdict. It becomes instead your chosen curriculum. If you need something outside yourself to measure by, you have to be careful what you choose. The crowd gives you back noise, it's all shifting opinion, but a role model gives you back a steady light, a set of principles you can actually use to steer. That's the Stoic shift. You stop trying to get approval from the many. You start aligning your actions with the example of the few, the virtuous few. The Stoics were serious about biography. They didn't just study ideas in the abstract. They studied lives. They looked at Socrates. He chose a principled death over a life of compromise. They looked at Cato. He stood firm when the entire political tide turned against him. They looked to their own teachers, their own parents. The goal wasn't imitation for applause. It was to learn from their choices, to use their lives as a mirror for your own character, not your popularity. You see this perfectly in Marcus Aurelius. In his private writings, he starts his meditations not with his own thoughts, but with a list. He names the people who shaped him, his grandfather, his father, his mother, his tutors, and he doesn't list their achievements or their fame. He lists their specific virtues. From one, he learned good humor, steadiness of temper. From another, simplicity in living, indifference to superficial honors. From another, to do his job without whining. He was holding up the mirror of these role models to check his own reflection. Was he living up to the virtues they embodied? That was his measure, not whether the Senate approved of him that day. That creates an internal compass. The contrast is stark. Imagine two people looking for guidance. One scrolls endlessly through social media, absorbing the curated highlights and hot takes of influencers. Their mood swings with each trend, each viral opinion. Their sense of what is good or valuable is outsourced to an algorithm built for engagement, not wisdom. The other person spends 30 minutes reading about the life of someone like Epictetus, born into hardship, gaining freedom, choosing a life of teaching. They learn about his core idea, the dichotomy of control. They see how he lived it, turning down gifts from the emperor, speaking truth to power, valuing inner freedom above all external comfort. That person walks away with a principle, a tool for their own mind. One source gives you a fleeting feeling of belonging. The other gives you a durable standard for action. So here's something practical. This week, choose one role model for integrity. It could be a historical figure, someone from literature, a family member, even a public figure known for principled consistency. The key is you admire them for their character, not their fame. Now, identify one specific quality they embody that you want to strengthen in yourself. Was it their courage to speak an uncomfortable truth, their relentless patience in adversity, their deep compassion without condition? Write that quality down. Then for the next 7 days, let that quality be your silent guide. In moments of decision, especially social decisions where you feel the pull toward approval, ask a simple question. What would my role model's quality advise here? Their courage or patience or honesty? You're no longer looking to the crowd for the answer. You're consulting a higher, more stable court of judgment. You're using a better mirror, and in that reflection, you start to build a self that doesn't need the crowd's applause, because it's being shaped by a far more meaningful standard. Your attention is your currency. You're either spending it on something solid or on junk. Every minute you spend wondering what they think, every bit of energy you put into managing an image, that's a withdrawal from a finite account, and you're investing it in the most volatile market there is, the opinions of other people. The Stoics had a word for this directed energy of the mind. They called it orexis. It's your rational desire, your impulse toward what you decide is good. When you want approval, you're aiming that orexis, that deepest wanting, at an external target. One you can't control. You're trying to buy peace of mind with a currency the world can devalue instantly. Epictetus put it precisely. He said people aren't disturbed by things, but by the principles they form about things. And those principles are shaped by our desires. If you desire, above all, to be seen as successful, then any hint of failure becomes a catastrophe. If you desire, above all, to be liked, then a single cold look feels like rejection. The disturbance isn't in the event, it's in the immense value your desire has assigned to it. You've placed a huge psychic bet on an outcome you don't own. And that creates a deep exhaustion. Think about posting something online, you share it, and then the real work begins, the compulsive checking, the refresh button. Passing the tone of each comment, the mental accounting of likes versus your last post. For hours, your attention, your currency, is held captive in a state of anxious speculation. You're a day trader in the volatile market of public sentiment, and it's draining your reserves. Now contrast that with the focused energy of working on a skill. Just for the sake of getting better, an hour practicing an instrument, writing in a private journal, learning a new concept. Here, your orexis is directed inward. Your desire is for growth, for understanding, for mastery, things entirely within your control. The energy feels different. It's not anxious or scattered. It's concentrated, purposeful. It replenishes you. You aren't spending your currency. You're investing it in an asset that compounds internally. This is the Stoic redirection. Freedom is an economy of the mind. It means auditing your desires, moving your investments from externals to internals, from hoping for praise to cultivating patience, from craving recognition to practicing courage. The virtues are the only reliable assets. Their value never crashes. They pay dividends in tranquility, in self-respect, in the ability to face any circumstance with your mind intact. So conduct a simple audit. Look back at your attention budget from yesterday. In a quiet moment, account for your mental energy. How much of it was spent, directly or indirectly, on worrying about others' opinions, rehearing a conversation, anticipating a reaction, scrolling for validation? And how much was spent on purposeful action, action aligned with your own principles? The ratio you find is the current balance sheet of your freedom. If the first number dwarfs the second, you know where the leak is. You know where your sovereignty is being traded away for the junk bonds of external approval. The good news is you're the sole account holder. You can reallocate, starting with your very next thought. That belief is a subtle bondage. If they knew my struggles, my real intent, my full story, then they'd understand. Then they'd approve. It sounds like a cry for fairness, but it's a trap. You're still placing the source of your validation outside. You're still waiting for a verdict. A more informed verdict, maybe, but a verdict. And you're assuming something impossible, that perfect understanding can travel from your inner world into theirs. It can't. Their judgment is always filtered through their own story, their own limits. The Stoic path is different. It seeks self-knowledge, not universal understanding. Your peace comes from knowing your own truth, not from broadcasting it successfully. Marcus Aurelius confronted this. He wrote about how even those who praise us to the skies will soon be gone. And we will be gone. He asked, what is eternal fame? Utterly nothing. He wasn't being morbid. He was being free. He was cutting the cord to that longing to be known, to be remembered correctly. If even memory is fleeting, then banking on being perfectly understood now is a fragile foundation. Your legacy in the minds of others is not yours to design. Consider an artist. They pour their heart into a piece. It's drawn from a personal loss, a private joy. They release it hoping, if only the audience knew the story behind this brushstroke, that lyric, they would see its depth. But the audience brings their own lives. They misinterpret, they see the surface, they critique the technique and miss the soul. The artist feels a loneliness, a disconnect. The Stoic approach wouldn't be to write a long manifesto. It would be to find complete validation in the act of creation itself. The work was honest. It was an expression of your skill and your vision at that time. That is the good. The external reaction, whether based on full understanding or wild misunderstanding, belongs to the realm of indifference. It is whether the artist's fulfillment was in the doing, in the integrity of the expression. The rest is the world's business, so bring this into your own life. What's one truth about yourself you wish others understood? Maybe it's that your quietness isn't aloofness, but deep observation. That your career change wasn't a failure, but courage. That your past actions came from a place of pain, not malice. Sit with that wish. Now, gently challenge it. Can you find the full validation of that truth within yourself right now? Can you look at that quietness and affirm to yourself that it is your strength? Can you honor your own courage without needing their certificate? Can you forgive your own past from self-knowledge, making their forgiveness a secondary grace, not a primary need? When you can do that, you reclaim power. You're no longer waiting for the world to read your biography. You are living it, and you are its most compassionate witness. This self-validation is the bedrock. From it, you can share yourself more freely, not to be understood, but to connect. And if misunderstanding comes, it doesn't unravel you. Because your story was never theirs to write. You can think of yourself as an actor on a stage, or as an architect building something. The actor is always reading the room, adjusting the delivery, looking for that applause. The architect is focused on a blueprint, on integrity, on a structure meant to last long after everyone has left. That's the shift from performance to purpose. It's a Stoic idea, really, this final move toward freedom. A performance is reactive. The script gets written by the expectations in the room. You figure out what people want, and you deliver that version of yourself. Your energy goes into monitoring reactions, managing impressions, hitting your marks for the best effect. It's exhausting, because the role is never truly yours. You're just a temporary occupant of a character built for popularity. Purpose is different. The Stoics called it your telos, your ultimate aim. For them, it was singular. To live in accordance with virtue and nature, to use your reason to act with wisdom, justice, courage, moderation. This purpose needs no audience. Its fulfillment is measured by an internal standard. Did I act with integrity? Did I choose what was right? The answers are entirely within your control. They don't depend on a review. The Stoic cosmic perspective makes this powerful. They saw each person as part of a larger, rational whole. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself to do what his own nature required, and to accept what nature as a whole required of him. His purpose was to play his part well in the grand scheme. When you zoom out to that scale, the need for a colleague's nod or a stranger's like seems almost comically small. It's like an actor in a vast, epic play worrying about whether one person in the back row is smiling. The purpose is to perform the play with truth. The isolated reactions are irrelevant. You see this contrast in education. Take two students in the same difficult class. The first student is performing. They choose topics the professor will favor. They participate in discussions to be seen as smart. Their goal is the grade, the praise, the recognition. Their motivation is external. When they face a tough concept, their frustration is about the score, not the gap in their understanding. Their learning is a means to an end, the end being social validation. The second student is driven by purpose. Their telos is to understand, to grow their mind, to master the subject. They ask questions out of genuine curiosity, even if it makes them look unprepared. They choose challenging projects that interest them, not just those that guarantee an A. The grade is a byproduct, not the prize. The prize is the competence they build within themselves. This student can face failure on an assignment not as a personal indictment, but as useful feedback on the path to mastery. One is building a transcript, the other is building a mind. So how do you make this shift? It starts with a simple question. Define, in one sentence, your purpose for today. Make it independent of anyone's observation or praise. It might sound like, today, my purpose is to listen with full attention in every conversation. Or today, my purpose is to complete my work with thorough care, regardless of who notices. Or today, my purpose is to respond to frustration with patience. That sentence becomes your internal blueprint. It's what you're building when you feel the old pull to perform, to say the witty thing to impress, to cut a corner to look faster, to hide a struggle to appear competent. You return to your sentence. Does this action serve my purpose of listening, of thoroughness, of patience? If it doesn't, you have a clear reason to choose differently. You're no longer an actor ad-libbing for applause. You're the architect checking the work against the plan, and with each day built on purpose, the stage lights fade, and you find yourself standing in the solid, quiet freedom of your own design. Between a look and your reaction, there's a space. That space is your freedom. The Stoics had a name for it, the Discipline of Assent. It's maybe their most practical tool. Assent is that inner nod. An impression comes into your mind and you either agree, yes, this is true, or you pause, you question it. In social life, these automatic assents are what chain us. Someone gives a cold reply and instantly we agree, they're disrespecting me. A post gets few likes and we agree, my content is worthless. We don't even notice we've done it. The hurt, the anxiety, it just follows, as if the event itself caused it. But Epictetus taught that the event and our suffering aren't directly connected. Between them is our judgment, our act of assent. He said it's not things that disturb people, but their judgments about things, and a judgment is just an act of your mind. You can learn to control it, so take an example. You get a terse email from a coworker, just a few blunt lines, no pleasantries. The automatic thought chain starts instantly. They're angry with me, I must have done something wrong, they don't respect my work, this is bad. Each of those is an impression you're agreeing to without a second thought. Your heart rate climbs, defensiveness rises. You've just handed your emotional state over to a few lines of text. Now engage the discipline, pause, create that space. Examine the impressions before you agree. The first impression is sensory. The email is terse. That's a factual observation. Full stop. The next impression is an interpretation. They are angry with me. Do you have proof? Could the terseness be because they're rushed, stressed, or just poor at written communication? You can withhold assent from the angry interpretation. You can say, I see the email is brief. The sender's internal state is unknown to me. My worth and the quality of my work are separate facts. In that space of non-assent, you regain choice. You can craft a response from clarity, not from reactive fear. Reply with calm professionalism. Seek clarification if needed, or just address the content. You are free because you didn't enslave yourself to an unexamined story. This practice turns every social interaction into training. A friend cancels plans last minute. The first impression, they don't value our time, withhold assent. The fact is they cancelled. The reason is unknown. It could be a personal hardship, poor planning, or yes, a lack of consideration. But by pausing, you prevent the story from becoming your truth before you have evidence. You protect your peace from a phantom narrative. Then you choose how to respond, from understanding or from clear boundary setting, not from bruised ego. Epictetus gave guidance on this. He said when any disturbing impression comes, meet it with words. Tell the impression, you are just an impression, and not necessarily the thing you claim to be. Then examine it, test it, see if it passes the test of logic and your principles. A frown is just a movement of facial muscles. It's data. It is not a verdict on your soul unless you stamp it with your assent and call it one. So here's a prompt. Sometime in the next day, you'll receive some form of feedback. A comment, a look, a text, a silence. Your task isn't to control the feedback. Your task is to practice the pause. Before the internal reaction solidifies, create that space. Mentally say, I see this. I do not yet agree with what it might mean. Examine it. Is this impression a fact or is it my story? In that momentary gap, you'll feel the contours of your own freedom. You're no longer a puppet jerked by every social string. You're the one holding the scissors. The applause you're looking for, think about it across centuries, not seconds. The Stoics had a practice for this. A way to shrink today's opinions down to their actual size. They called it Memento Mori, a reminder of mortality, but it's bigger than that. It's about how everything passes. All fame, all infamy, every social worry you have now, it all fades into the quiet dust of history, and to cling to something that fleeting, to trade your peace for it, that doesn't make sense. It just means you lose your freedom to the moment, chasing a shadow that's already dissolving. Marcus Aurelius comes back to this. He writes about the vast forgetfulness of time. How many people were praised to the skies and are now completely forgotten, and the people who praised them, they're gone too. He tells himself to look at the palaces of the great, the graves of the famous, and see they're just dust and old stories. He isn't being grim, he's trying to be free. If you zoom out to the scale of centuries, that urgent need for a good review today, for a certain standing this week, it loses its weight. It becomes a small data point in a story no one might remember. History is full of these reversals. Take Vincent van Gogh. In his lifetime, he sold maybe 1 or 2 paintings. The art establishment saw him as a failure, unstable, his work not worth noting. The opinion of his contemporaries was a wall of indifference. Today, his work is among the most celebrated and valuable in the world. The judgment of his peers wasn't a final verdict. It was a temporary condition, like a weather pattern that passed, or Galileo, vilified in his time for heresy, now honored as a founder of modern science. The crowd's condemnation proved no more permanent than morning fog. This isn't about becoming famous later. It's about the instability of reputation itself. The praise you want today could be tomorrow's criticism. The respect you have now could be forgotten next year. To anchor your sense of self to that shifting sand, it guarantees you'll be off balance, always trying to rebuild your foundation on a moving surface. So here's something practical. Take a moment, write down the name of one person whose opinion of you matters a great deal, whose approval you quietly seek, or whose disapproval you fear. And right beside that name, write this short phrase: in 100 years, this will not matter. Sit with that. Let the scale of those 100 years sink in. All the anxiety, the strategic words, the hidden hopes tied to that person's view, they become part of a story time will gently erase. This isn't a call to nihilism. It's a call to focus. It frees you to ask, if this won't matter in a century, what will matter about how I live today? Your answer points you toward actions of character, not performance. It points you back to your inner citadel, the only thing you build that time can't truly touch. Stoicism is after this state where your peace isn't up for negotiation. Because it doesn't come from negotiators outside you. That's the old Greek idea, autarkeia, inner self-sufficiency. It's not about becoming a hermit. It's not about rejecting relationships. It's about where your contentment comes from, when your sense of worth, your calm, your joy, when that's generated from inside, you're free. You're not a beggar at the door of public opinion anymore. You're not waiting for someone to hand you a scrap of validation. You carry your feast with you. Seneca wrote about this. He said the wise person is self-content. Complete in themselves, all their good is inside. What that means practically is their happiness isn't a product they order from the world. It's a skill they've cultivated internally. They can be in a bustling city or on a quiet island, and their core serenity stays the same because it was never attached to the bustle or the quiet. It was attached to their character, their judgments, their virtuous choices, things they always have with them, and this shows a critical distinction. The difference between loneliness and chosen solitude. Loneliness is a feeling of lack, an emptiness that reaches outward. It's seeking someone, something to fill it. It whispers that you're not enough on your own, that you need external company, external noise, external approval to feel whole. Chosen solitude is different. It's an expression of self-sufficiency. It's the conscious decision to be with yourself, not because you have to, but because you are good company. In that quiet space, you aren't avoiding people. You're communing with your own mind. You're practicing the art of being complete. Think of 2 people sitting alone in a park. The first person feels lonely. They are acutely aware of the couples walking by, the friends laughing. Their solitude feels like a sentence. Their mind is focused on what's missing. On the external world of connection they're not part of. Their peace is contingent on that world changing. The second person is in a state of autarkia. They feel the sun, they observe the trees, they follow their own thoughts. Their solitude feels like a choice, a richness. They're present with their own experience. Their peace is generated from their engagement with the moment, from their own inner dialogue. One is waiting for the world to complete them. The other is already complete. And so they can engage with the world freely, without neediness. That's the ultimate freedom from seeking approval. When you're self-sufficient, you interact with others from a place of abundance. Not deficit. You share ideas not to be validated but to contribute. You offer kindness not to be liked but because it's right. You can receive criticism or praise with the same steady mind. Because neither adds to nor subtracts from the internal good you already possess. So here's a direct challenge, a practical experiment. Sometime in the next day, carve out 30 minutes. Go for a walk or sit in a room, leave your phone behind, deliberately choose solitude with no external input, no podcasts, no music, no scrolling, just you and your own thoughts. Observe what happens. Does your mind immediately itch for distraction? Do you feel a restless need to check for messages, to fill the silence? That restlessness is the muscle of neediness, of external dependency, flexing. Your task isn't to judge it, but to sit with it, breathe through it. See if you can find a point of quiet contentment in simply being. Without any outside entertainment or validation. That quiet point, however small, is the first brick in the foundation of your inner citadel. It's the taste of true self-sufficiency. Success isn't a place you get to. It's how the journey feels. When we link success to things outside us, the promotion, the likes, the praise, we're letting other people decide what our work means. We end up serving a scoreboard we didn't make. Stoicism suggests a different way to look at it. What if failing honestly was actually more successful than winning by pretending? That's what this idea is about, redefining success from the inside. When you want approval, you start chasing someone else's idea of winning. You're after their trophy, their version of a good life. Stoicism says a successful action is one done with good reasoning and virtue. The result comes second. The outside thing, whether you get the job, win the race, get the applause, that's in the category of things we can't fully control. It doesn't measure your worth. The only thing that really matters is the quality of your effort, the integrity behind it. Epictetus used the example of a runner. He said the runner's goal shouldn't be to win the race. That's external. It depends on how fast others are. The runner's goal should be to run the best race they can. To give full effort, to use their skill. That part is within their control. Whether they come first or last doesn't change their personal success. If they ran well, they succeeded. If they won by tripping someone, they failed, even with a medal. The real victory was in the virtue of the effort. Take a modern example. Two people apply for the same job. One exaggerates their experience, tells the interviewer what they want to hear, presents a polished but somewhat false version of themselves. They get the job. By outside standards, they're a success. They got the position, the title, the salary, but inside they've compromised. They succeeded through pretense. That victory is built on dishonesty, and they have to keep up that facade. The internal cost is a slow erosion of self-respect. The second applicant is completely honest. They present their skills truthfully, admit where they're still learning, speak with genuine curiosity about the role. They don't get the job. By external standards, they failed. They face rejection, but internally they succeeded. They acted with honesty and courage. They kept their integrity under pressure. That internal success is a permanent asset. It strengthens their character for next time. It lets them sleep with a clear conscience. Which person is truly more successful? Stoicism says clearly it's the second one. This reframing frees you from being ruled by results. It lets you focus on the process, the work itself, without your well-being depending on an unpredictable outcome. You can pour yourself into a creative project and call it a success the moment you express your truth, no matter how it sells. You can have a hard conversation with someone and see it as successful because you spoke with kindness and honesty, even if the other person didn't respond how you hoped. So here's something to consider. Think of a moment you've called a failure, a project that didn't launch, a relationship that ended, a goal you missed. Now re-evaluate it with this lens. Put the outcome aside for a minute. Look at your own actions then. Did you apply effort? Did you act with good intent? Did you use virtues like patience or courage in the attempt? If you did, then that so-called failure had a core of real success, the success of your character in action. That part is yours to keep. The external result was just weather passing through. By taking back this definition, you reclaim the power to name your own victories. The price of freedom is that moment of social discomfort, that quiet tension before you say something difficult. That's where courage is. Stoic freedom isn't a calm mind in a quiet room. It's a calm mind in a storm of disagreement. It's holding a conviction and acting on it, even when you know it might be unpopular, even when you know it could be misunderstood. Because the need for approval is the direct enemy of this courage. If you need everyone to like you, you can't do what's right when what's right is inconvenient. When it challenges the group, true freedom means you can stand by your reasoned principles, even if it means standing for a moment entirely alone. This is where philosophy meets daily life. Seneca wrote about the crowd and the virtuous few. He said the many are not a good guide. They're swayed by opinion, not truth. To follow the crowd is to put your inner compass in the hands of the lost. The courageous path is to follow your own reason, even when it leads away from applause. This isn't about being stubborn for its own sake. It means your loyalty is to truth and virtue first. Social harmony comes second. Sometimes they align, other times you have to choose. You see this in Cato the Younger. In the final days of the Roman Republic, as Caesar's power grew, Cato stood almost alone in the Senate. He argued for the old republican values. He was called stubborn, a relic. His convictions were deeply unpopular with the rising tide. He was mocked, sidelined. His cause was defeated, but in the Stoic view, Cato was profoundly free. His worth wasn't tied to the winning side. It was tied to his commitment to what he believed was just. His courage was in his consistency, not his victory. He became a symbol for later Stoics, for Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, a symbol of living by principle, regardless of the social cost. Bring this to a modern context, a team meeting. A popular but ethically questionable shortcut is proposed. Momentum builds. Everyone seems on board, eager for the result. Speaking up would break that momentum, create friction. It might mark you as difficult, not a team player. The desire for approval, for belonging, urges you to stay silent. But the courage of conviction asks a different question. Is this right? If your reasoned judgment says it's not, then freedom lies in voicing that concern. Not with aggression, but with calm conviction. The goal isn't to win the argument. It's to discharge your duty to truth. The internal fortitude isn't about being loud. It's about being steady when the social temperature drops. This applies to countless quiet moments, defending a colleague unfairly blamed, questioning a common practice that seems wasteful, sharing a creative idea against the current trend, even politely declining to participate in gossip. Each act carries a small social tax, a moment of discomfort, a risk of being seen as odd. But each act is also a brick in the foundation of your inner citadel. You prove to yourself that your integrity is more valuable than seamless social integration. So here's a reflective prompt. What's one belief you hold but rarely voice for fear of disapproval? It doesn't have to be grand. It could be a belief about how work should be done, how people should be treated, a personal value you hide in certain company. Now consider what it would look like to voice it with calm conviction, not to force it on others but to state it as your truth. How would you phrase it? What calm explanation would you offer? Just imagining this strengthens the muscle of courage. It prepares you for the moment when your freedom depends on your willingness to pay that price. That small price of social discomfort, and in that preparedness you find a deeper liberty, a more resilient kind. To build immunity to needing approval, you expose yourself to small amounts of its opposite. That's the Stoic method, voluntary discomfort. It's not about punishing yourself. It's like a vaccine. You take tiny, controlled doses of social unease. To build up antibodies against the fear of other people's opinions, you're teaching your nervous system something new. That mild disapproval isn't a threat. That you can survive without constant validation. You can even thrive without it. This practice weakens the grip of external opinion, and you do it by choice. The teacher Musonius Rufus advocated for this. He said we should practice neediness, not to suffer, but to see our own strength. If you want to be free from anxiety about possessions, he said, practice living with little. If you want to be free from the fear of poverty, get to know it voluntarily. You apply that same logic to social fears. If you want to be free from the anxiety of disapproval, get to know that feeling. In small, manageable doses, on your own terms, this isn't about becoming callous. It's about proving to yourself that your worth is separate from the social weather. That you can walk through a light social rain and not melt. Seneca did this too. He would periodically live simply, eat plain food, wear coarse clothing, sleep on a hard bed. His friends asked why a wealthy man would do that. His answer was about freedom. He said, by doing this, I remind myself that the conditions I fear are not evils. I strengthen my mind so that if fortune takes my comforts, it finds me already familiar with their absence, unshaken. You do the same with social comfort. You voluntarily step away from the warmth of constant approval to remember you can generate your own warmth. In practice, this means low-stakes, deliberate actions. It's training, not a performance. One example is to go a full day without checking for likes or comments. Post something if you want, then close the app. The impulse to check is the approval-seeking muscle flexing. By not feeding it, you let that muscle atrophy. You feel the itch of curiosity, the slight anxiety of not knowing. And you sit with it. You discover the world doesn't end. Your value doesn't disappear just because you don't know the public verdict. Another practice is to give a genuine compliment without expecting anything back. Not even a thank you. Do it and walk away. This breaks the transactional chain in your mind. You're practicing generosity for its own sake, separate from the social reward. Or ask a question you fear might sound dumb in a meeting, just one. Frame it simply. Say, I'm not sure I understand. Could you explain? This voluntarily embraces the minor social risk of appearing less than fully informed. It strengthens the muscle of valuing understanding over appearing smart. You could wear an outfit that's comfortable and true to you, but slightly out of step with your group's usual style. Not to make a statement, but to feel the subtle pressure of being different and to realize it's just fabric. It's just a choice. The sky doesn't fall. Each of these acts is a small dose of the social discomfort you fear. Like a vaccine, it introduces a weakened version of the pathogen, the fear of disapproval, so your psychological immune system can learn to handle it. You're building evidence in your own lived experience that you can manage it, that the feeling of unease passes, that your core self remains intact, and often feels stronger for having gone through it. So this week, choose one small, safe act of voluntary social discomfort. It could be any of those examples or one you design yourself. The key is that it causes a slight flutter of that old fear, a minor tremor of what will they think. Perform the act, then observe your emotional response afterwards. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. Did the feared outcome happen? How did you feel an hour later? Was there a quiet sense of liberation underneath the initial flutter? That quiet sense is the taste of the freedom you're building, one deliberate, uncomfortable choice at a time. There's listening to learn, and there's listening to be liked. They're not the same thing. One is a position of strength. You're engaging with the world for a purpose, for utility. The other is a position of weakness. It's a plea for the world to tell you you're okay. The Stoics worked on this. They called it separating feedback from approval. When you're grounded, feedback is just information. It's data about how something you did landed. You can pick it up, you can look at it. Is there something true here I can use? Is this something I can clarify? It's clinical, like a scientist looking at results. Your inner foundation is solid, so the data can come in. It doesn't threaten you. You're free to take it or leave it based on your own judgment. Seeking approval is the opposite. It's not about the information. It's about the emotional exchange. You're listening for a tone, a look, a phrase that says you're good. You're not evaluating the content. You're monitoring for a verdict on your worth that comes from a place of lack, a hollow feeling that needs an outside voice to fill it. That's servitude. You've made your emotional state depend on their delivery. Epictetus had instructions for this. He said, when you hear someone speaking ill of you, don't defend yourself. Don't resent it. Examine what they say. If the criticism is true, correct yourself. If it's false, laugh it off. A wise person can listen to harsh criticism and only take what's rational from it. They discard the rest, the anger, the insult, the tone, without turmoil. Why? Because they never put their self-worth on the table. Only their actions were up for review. That's the freedom of an examined life. You're the judge in your own court. You use all testimony, even hostile testimony, to inform your rulings. You're not a defendant begging a jury for mercy. You see this in something like a performance review. One person sits there anxiously waiting for the final rating. Their heart is pounding. They hang on every word, but they're not really hearing the words. They're translating them into one question. Do they like me? Am I approved? The score at the end decides their whole week. That's listening to be liked. Another person goes into the same review from a place of stability. They listen for utility. They might hear several critiques. Their mind works like a filter. They ignore the comments that are vague or personal, but they latch onto one specific, actionable piece of advice. Something like, the client report could have been more concise in the executive summary. That's data, that's useful. They leave the meeting not with a bruised ego or a swollen pride, but with a clear, small task for their own growth. They were free to receive the feedback because they didn't need the blanket approval. So think of a piece of feedback you got recently, from a boss, a friend, a comment online, even a look from a partner. Now separate it into two piles. In the first pile, put the pure factual content, what was actually said about your actions or your work, just the observable data. In the second pile, put your emotional desire. Your wish for that person to think well of you, to validate you, to give their stamp of approval. Look at the two piles. The first pile is potential fuel for growth if you choose to use it. The second pile is the source of your suffering. It's the need that turns feedback into a personal trial. By seeing them apart, you start to reclaim your power. You begin to choose which pile you give your energy to. And in that choice, you move from a servant waiting for a kind word to a sovereign curator of your own improvement. When you look for approval from the crowd, you're letting their anxieties in, their frenzies, their prejudices. It's a kind of psychic infection. The Stoics saw this. They called the raw, reactive emotions of the crowd passions, and they described these passions as diseases of the soul, irrational judgments. They sweep people into a storm of wanting the wrong things, fearing the wrong things. To seek approval from a group driven by that, you risk catching their illness. You start to absorb their distorted sense of what matters, their collective panic over trivial things, their shared indifference toward what's actually important. Your own inner compass, your reason, it gets overridden by the static of the crowd's noise. Seneca wrote about this. He warned about the madness of the mob. He said a mind that's impressionable, unguarded, it can't help but get infected by the talk of the crowd, by their behavior. His advice was to withdraw. Withdraw into yourself as much as you can. Associate with people who make you better and welcome those you can improve. The process is mutual, but it starts with separation. A deliberate distance from the emotional contagion of the multitude, because you can't think clearly, not while you're swimming in a sea of other people's unchecked reactions. We see this play out in cycles. Think of a market bubble. An asset starts to rise, a stock, a cryptocurrency. The early excitement spreads, stories circulate. Stories of ordinary people making fortunes, the desire to belong, to not miss out, to be part of the winning crowd. It becomes overwhelming. The rational questions get drowned out. Is this asset really worth the price? What are the fundamentals? Drowned out by the roar of collective greed, the fear of missing out. People pour in their savings. Not from analysis, from a contagious passion, a desire for the approval of the trend, for the social validation of being in the know. Then the bubble pops. And the same contagion works in reverse. Panic spreads just as irrationally. The individual is carried away. They traded their reason for a ticket into the frenzied crowd. Or social media outrage, a topic trends, a narrative forms quickly, often simplistic, charged with moral certainty. To seek approval there means to align immediately. To align with the prevailing sentiment, to express the correct level of indignation, to use the approved language, the rush to belong, to be seen as righteous, to gain the likes of the in-group. It overrides slower thought. More nuanced thought. People absorb the collective passion. They amplify it, often anger or disdain. They do it without stopping, without examining the facts. The context, their own true principles. They catch the fever, and in doing that, they silence their own inner voice, their voice of reason. That's the hidden cost of seeking approval. It's not just giving away your freedom. You risk corrupting your own judgment. You start to value what the crowd values, fear what they fear, desire what they desire, even when those things have nothing to do with your well-being, with your virtue. Your soul becomes an echo chamber for their pathologies. So here's a prompt. Identify one opinion, a widely held opinion in your circle, your social circle, your professional circle, something you publicly go along with but privately question. It might be a cynical view about work, a dismissive attitude toward a group, a relentless drive for a certain status symbol. Sit with that for a moment. Then gently separate yourself. Examine that opinion like a specimen, not from rebellion, from a place of calm reason. Ask yourself quietly, do I truly believe this? Is this judgment based on evidence, on my principles, or did I absorb it? Did I absorb it through a desire to fit in, to be approved? Just bringing that question into the light, it begins the process. The process of disinfection. It creates a small, clean space, a space between you and the contagion, and in that space, your own rational compass can finally find its north again. The ultimate freedom might be a quiet, internal I don't mind. It's not a shrug of defeat, it's not coldness, it's a kind of serene detachment. That's the Stoic idea of adiaphora, indifference. It's a radical shift in what you let have weight in your soul. You're not indifferent to people, to their feelings, to your duties. You're indifferent to the power their opinions have to define you. You can care for someone deeply, listen to them fully, and still hold your choices as your own. Their approval or disapproval doesn't settle your worth. That verdict was never theirs to give. Epictetus taught this. He'd walk his students through it. He said, when someone insults you or praises you, remember they're not addressing your mind or your will. They're addressing your reputation, your body, your possessions, things that are external. Their words are just sounds. Their judgments are just opinions moving through another mind. To be disturbed by them is to agree with their assessment before you've even looked at it. He advised quiet observation. If the criticism is true, you thank them for pointing it out. If it's false, you see it as their error, not your injury. In either case, your inner citadel stays unbreached because you never open the gate. You just don't mind the noise outside the walls. Think of a parent in a modern playground. They've read, reflected, made a reasoned decision about their child's education. Maybe it's a less conventional path. At a gathering, other parents share their own choices, wrapped in strong opinions. One turns and directly questions the decision. The tone isn't curious, it's challenging. The old script screams to defend, to justify, to win the argument and secure their approval as a good parent. The Stoic parent feels the pull of that script. But then they access that inner space. They feel their love for their child, their commitment to their reasoned choice, and toward the disapproving opinion itself, they cultivate a gentle "I don't mind." They can respond with kindness, maybe offer a brief explanation, but their emotional core, their sense of being a good parent, is not tied to the other person's nod. They are free from the exhausting work of converting every critic, free to act from love and principle, not from social anxiety. That's the profound liberation. It turns the volume down on the world's commentary so you can hear your own reason, so you can act from your nature. The struggle for approval is a constant, low-grade war. Declaring "I don't mind" is laying down your weapons. It's a peace treaty with reality, the reality that you cannot control minds, only your own. So here's a small practice. Think of a minor, recent instance where you felt a flicker of disapproval, maybe a curt reply to a text, a missed invitation, a lukewarm reaction to something you shared. Replay that moment. Now internally say the phrase with calm sincerity, "I don't mind," not as a suppression of feeling, but as a conscious decision to withdraw the emotional investment you placed in that person's momentary reaction. Feel the space that opens up. That space is the frontier of your freedom. What if you stopped running for office in other people's minds and started building your own inner republic? That's the shift here. You move from being a politician on a campaign trail to becoming an architect of a life, your life as a project. The Stoics saw existence that way, not as a popularity contest to win, but as a continuous work of art to shape, a project of aligning your character with reason. With nature, the only judge that matters is the one inside you, the one who knows the blueprint. Think about the daily anxiety of a popularity contest. You wake up and the campaign begins. You craft your words for appeal. You monitor the polls, the likes, the glances, the tones of voice. Your energy is scattered. Reactive, spent on managing perceptions. It's exhausting because you're trying to govern a territory you don't own, the minds of others. Now picture the focused work of a craftsman. In a quiet workshop, a woodworker shaping a chair, a gardener tending a plot. Their satisfaction comes from the work itself, from seeing the raw material respond. Their metric is internal. Is it straight? Is it strong? Is it growing well? The Stoic is that craftsman, but the material is their own character, their own judgments. Their reactions, the tools are reason, reflection, deliberate practice. The project is a life lived well, not a life applauded loudly. Marcus Aurelius had an image for this. He wrote that the soul should be like a sphere, perfect and complete in itself when it's true to its own nature. It doesn't reach outward for its shape. It doesn't need external approval to be round. It finds its perfection in being what it is. A sphere rolls smoothly, undisturbed by the uneven ground. That's the soul aligned with its project, focused on its own integrity, not on the contours of public opinion. You can feel the difference in your energy. The energy of trying to please everyone is scattered. It's like trying to fill a dozen different cups with a single, leaky watering can. You run from person to person, never fully quenching anything, always feeling depleted. The directed energy of a philosophical project is like a deep, steady well. You draw from it to nourish your own growth. Your practices are the bucket: morning journaling where you reflect on your principles, evening review where you examine where you strayed, reading that strengthens your understanding. These aren't chores, they're the daily maintenance of your inner republic, the quiet council meetings where you, the sovereign, check the state of your realm. So make it tangible. This week, take 10 minutes, write a brief project charter for your character development, just for this month. This isn't a to-do list for the world. It's a specification for your inner work. Define your own metrics for success. They have to be entirely within your control. Your metric can't be get praised at work. It could be speak with honesty in every meeting, regardless of the reaction. Your metric can't be make more friends. It could be initiate one genuine conversation per week without expectation. Your metric can't be seen as competent. It could be prepare thoroughly for each task I undertake. Write these down. This charter is your constitution, the law you give yourself. When you feel that old pull to check the social polls, you return to your charter. You ask, am I succeeding by my own metrics? This redirects your gaze from the fickle audience outside to the steady workbench within, and on that workbench you are always free to build. Not every thought needs a spokesperson. Not every action needs a defense. That inner lawyer always preparing a case for the jury of other people. It's a heavy burden. It's another form of seeking approval, but it's disguised. Disguised as a need for understanding. You feel this compulsion to explain your choices, your feelings, to explain your preferences, as if you need a verdict from them. A verdict of not guilty, so you can finally feel at peace with yourself. The Stoic, someone grounded in their own judgment, learns a different art, the art of letting an action stand on its own. They trust their own internal process enough that they stop presenting evidence. They stop bringing everything to an external court. That's the liberation. The liberation of no longer explaining yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this. He wrote that it's foolish, really, to expect others to see the world as you do. They have their own reason, their own experiences. To waste your brief time trying to make them understand every single motive, it's a distraction from the real work, which is just living well. He saw over-explanation as a kind of vanity, a subtle belief that your internal world is so important it has to be broadcast, that it needs to be validated. The Stoic alternative is a quiet confidence. You make a choice from your principles, you act, and then you release the action. You don't attach a footnote. A lengthy footnote justifying it to the world. Your peace comes from knowing why you did it. It doesn't come from their agreement. This plays out in small moments. All the time, you're invited to an event, a social event, and you just don't wish to go. The old pattern kicks in. You feel this pressure to craft a story. A convincing story, an elaborate excuse about a prior commitment or an illness or a work crisis. You invent this story, but not for them. You invent it for you. To shield yourself from their potential disapproval, from their judgment that you're not a team player or not fun. The energy you spend on that fabrication, that's energy stolen. Stolen from your own tranquility. The Stoic practice is to decline with a simple clarity. Thank you, but I won't be able to make it. No drama, no detailed defense. If someone presses, you just repeat it gently but firmly. I appreciate the invite, but I have other priorities, and that priority might just be your need for rest. For solitude, for time on a personal project, that reason is valid. It doesn't need an external stamp. By not explaining, you do two things, two profound things. First, you honor your own boundary, and second, you train yourself. You train yourself to withstand that mild social discomfort, the discomfort of not being fully understood. You prove to yourself that you can survive their curiosity. You can survive their mild disappointment without your inner foundation cracking. This extends to your opinions. To your tastes, you prefer a quiet evening to a loud party. You choose a career path that isn't prestigious. You hold a political view that's unpopular in your circle. The urge to explain, to justify, to build a logical fortress around your preference, that urge is often just fear. Fear of social exile in disguise. It's the hope that if your reasoning is airtight enough, they'll grant you permission to be different, but true freedom is giving yourself that permission. It's saying, "This is my choice," and then letting that statement hang in the air, complete in itself. So here's a challenge for the next 24 hours. Choose one simple decision, one simple preference. It could be ordering a different meal than your friends, leaving a gathering early, not participating in some popular activity. When you make that choice, pay attention. Pay close attention to the internal pressure to explain. Feel that urge rise up and then consciously resist it. Offer a simple, polite statement. "I think I'll head out. I'm going to sit this one out." Then stop. Breathe through the silence that may follow. Notice that the world does not end. The imagined tribunal, it dissolves. It dissolves when you refuse to present your case. And in that small, quiet space after your unadorned choice, you'll feel it. The first faint breeze of a deeper freedom. The freedom of a soul that no longer reports to the court of public opinion. From a Stoic perspective, your critic is doing you a favor. They don't even know it. They're an unwitting teacher providing a service you couldn't buy. That friction, their disapproval, it's the exact substance you need to forge a stronger character. If you only seek approval, you surround yourself with mirrors. They reflect back only what you want to see. You live in an echo chamber of agreement. And in that comfortable space, your virtues grow soft, untested, like a muscle that never meets resistance. It weakens from lack of use. The critic, the disapprovers, they are the necessary resistance. The weight you have to lift to grow stronger. Marcus Aurelius returned to this idea constantly. He wrote that an impediment to action advances the action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He took it further. He practiced a radical form of gratitude. He would privately thank those who wronged him. Those who opposed him, not because he enjoyed it, because they gave him a gift, the gift of practice. They were like a sparring partner for his patience, for his forgiveness, for his ability to remain steady under fire. In his view, a difficult person wasn't a curse on his day. They were a training aid for his soul. Their opposition was the fire, and his virtue was the metal being tempered. Think of a master blacksmith forging a sword. The raw steel is heated in a blazing fire. Then it's struck repeatedly with a hammer. The fire isn't the enemy of the steel. It's the essential condition. It makes the steel malleable, ready to be shaped into something strong and sharp. The hammer's blows aren't an attack. They are the force that compacts and strengthens the metal's very structure. Your critic is both the fire and the hammer. Their disapproval heats the situation. It brings your emotions and your principles into sharp relief. Their opposition is the striking force. If you meet it with the right stance, it forges your patience, your humility, your clarity. Seeking only approval deprives you of these teachers. It's like a swordsmith who only works with cold, soft metal. The result might look like a sword, but it will bend or break under the first real pressure. A life lived solely for applause creates a character. It looks virtuous but crumples at the first sign of real conflict. Real hardship, you need the heat, you need the strike to become unbreakable. Consider an athlete training for a competition. They have a rival who openly doubts their ability, who makes dismissive comments. The athlete who seeks approval would be devastated. Their focus would splinter into managing that rival's opinion, into proving them wrong in the moment. Their energy would be reactive, scattered. The athlete who sees the critic as a teacher takes a different path. They use that doubt as fuel, but not for anger. For discipline, they channel it into one more repetition, into sharper focus on their form, into analyzing their own weaknesses with brutal honesty. The rival's opinion becomes irrelevant. What matters is the gift of heightened motivation. The rival, without knowing it, has become a drill sergeant. For the athlete's own willpower, the athlete's goal shifts. It shifts from winning the rival's approval to mastering their own craft. The competition becomes secondary. Secondary to the personal transformation, the transformation the rivalry made possible. So bring this into your own life. Identify one critic, one consistent source of disapproval in your world. It could be a skeptical family member, a competitive colleague, even the anonymous negativity of an online space. Now perform this mental reframe. Look at that source not as a judge, but as a reluctant teacher. Ask yourself quietly, what specific muscle of my character is this interaction secretly strengthening? Is there impatience teaching me deeper patience? Is there harshness training me to respond with measured calm? Is there skepticism forcing me to clarify my own convictions, to know my why with absolute certainty? List one way, just one. That simple act of recategorization disarms the critic's power to hurt you. It transforms them from an opponent in a battle you can't win into a prop in your own private gym. And in that transformation, you claim the only victory that ever mattered. You're the only real judge of your own character, so dismiss that jury of strangers. Their applause, it's just noise from the gallery. Their criticism, just a murmur from the seats. The gavel is in your hand. The final judgment on what you did, what you meant, what you're worth, that belongs to your own inner court. Your own reason, that's the ultimate sovereignty, and handing that judgment over to someone else, that's what lost freedom really is. You give the gavel away every time you let a like or a frown decide how you feel about yourself. So reclaiming that sovereignty, it's a daily practice. It's the deliberate act of closing the external court and convening your own. The Stoics were meticulous about this. Seneca, he ended each day with a quiet meditation. He would interrogate himself. He asked, what bad habit did I cure today? What fault did I resist? In what way am I better? He wasn't looking for a trophy. He was acting as both prosecutor and judge in his own case. His goal wasn't condemnation. It was correction, to align his actions more closely with his principles. By his own discerning light, now think about the common anxiety of waiting for a yearly performance review. Your heart's in your throat, your mind replays every interaction. Your whole sense of professional worth is just suspended waiting for a verdict from a manager who might have seen only a fraction of your work. That entire emotional state, it's a form of self-abdication. You've vacated the bench of your own judgment, and you're pacing in the hallway of someone else's opinion. Now contrast that with the peace of conducting your own rigorous, compassionate review each night. You sit in the quiet of your own mind. You are the sole authority. You ask yourself not what did they think of me today, but how did I live? Did I act with integrity in that difficult meeting? Did I choose patience when I felt provoked? Did I contribute something of value regardless of who noticed? This review, it isn't about generating a score for others to see. It's about taking stock for your own growth. It transfers the locus of evaluation from an external, unpredictable source to an internal, trustworthy one. You're no longer a defendant awaiting a sentence. You're a gardener tenderly examining the day's growth, noting what needs water, what needs pruning. All by your own careful hand. So tonight, before you sleep, try this brief template. It takes 5 minutes. First, ask what did I do well, but frame it in terms of virtue. Where did I act with courage, with kindness, with honesty, even in a small way? Acknowledge that. Second, ask with gentle honesty, where did I act for approval? When did I soften my truth to fit in? When did I check for a reaction instead of focusing on the task itself? Just note it without self-flagellation. Third, ask what one small thing can I improve tomorrow? Not a grand resolution, but a single, actionable intention. Perhaps I will listen fully in my first conversation without thinking of my reply. Or I will complete the first task of my day without distraction. This practice, it's how you rebuild the architecture of your inner court, brick by brick, night by night. You're reinstating yourself as the sovereign judge of a life that is and always was your own to live. We don't just want approval, we want to be crowned right. That's another chain, a subtler one. It feels noble, it feels like standing for truth. But when you dig into the feeling, it's often less about the truth itself and more about the victory. Being seen as its champion, you want the intellectual trophy, the moral high ground. You want your correctness acknowledged, and that need, that craving for the crown, is just approval seeking in a more sophisticated costume. It's ego masquerading as principle. The Stoics saw this trap. They distinguished sharply between wisdom and cleverness, between seeking truth and seeking to be seen as truthful. Their focus was always on the action itself, the understanding itself, not on the social recognition that might follow. If you do the right thing for the applause of being right, you've missed the point entirely. The virtue was in the doing, not in the credit. Epictetus gave us a line. He said, "It is better to be defeated while using reason than to conquer through error." Think about the weight of that. Better to lose an argument having spoken the truth than to win one by using a clever fallacy. The goal is alignment with what is true and reasonable. Not the conquest, not the feeling of superiority that comes from making your opponent look foolish. The moment you need to be seen as the victor, you've handed your peace over to the debate. You've made your inner state dependent on their concession, their admission of your rightness. That's another form of slavery. You can see this play out in any online argument. Two people clash in a comment section over a complex issue. One person is arguing to communicate. They're trying to understand the other's point, to find common ground, to clarify their own position. They're free. They can disengage at any time without feeling diminished, because their worth isn't tied to the final post. The other person is arguing to win. To look smart, to prove the other wrong. Every reply is a strategic move. They cherry-pick facts. They use sarcasm. They monitor for likes from lurkers as validation. Their heart rate is up. Their mood is tied to the thread. They are in chains of their own forging, because they need the external verdict, the verdict that they are the correct one. This need to be right isn't confined to debates. It seeps into daily life. A couple disagrees on the best route to take. One insists their way is faster. They spend the whole drive tense, watching the clock, secretly hoping for traffic on the other route to vindicate them. Their enjoyment of the trip, their connection with their partner, is sacrificed on the altar of being proven correct. A colleague proposes a different method for a project. You feel a surge of resistance. You list reasons why your way is better. But if you're honest, is your motivation the success of the project? Or is it the defense of your own competence, the need to be seen as the expert? So here's a reflective prompt. Think back to a recent disagreement you had. It could be as small as a chat about a movie or as large as a family discussion. Now, examine your motivation with gentle honesty. Was your primary aim to find truth, to understand, to reach a shared understanding? Or was it to be seen as right, to protect your image as the knowledgeable one, the sensible one, the morally aware one? That subtle distinction, once you see it, reveals where you might still be handing your gavel to an external jury. The path to freedom here is to care more for the truth of the matter than for your title as its discoverer. To find more satisfaction in a corrected misunderstanding than in a conceded point. That shift turns every argument from a battlefield into a shared search. And in that search, you are finally free. Imagine you were invisible for an hour, not to avoid your duties, but to see what you'd actually do, to find your real intentions. It's a way to test your authenticity, to act as if no one is watching, no audience, no judge, no chance for praise or blame. in that quiet space, what would move you? That's the core question. It peels back the layer of performance, the part that wants applause. It shows whether you do things for the action itself or for the review you might get. The Stoics aimed for this. They described a wise person who would be virtuous even if the gods and men were asleep, even if the whole universe was unaware. The virtue would be its own reward, its own reason. Seneca wrote about this. He said, "We should act not because it's the accepted thing, but because it's the right thing." The accepted thing is the social script. The right thing is what your internal compass says when the social audience is gone. Acting invisible trains you to follow that compass alone. To act for the sake of the action, not the spectator. So how do you try it? Start with something simple, cleaning your room. Usually you might clean because guests are coming, or because you don't want a roommate to think you're messy. Social pressure is the motive. Now clean as if invisible, knowing no one will ever see it. No one will ever comment. Do you still do it? And if you do, how? Do you rush, cut corners because the external reward is gone? Or do you find a different satisfaction in the order itself? In caring for your own space, in making a peaceful place for your own mind, that shift from cleaning for show to cleaning for sanctuary is the point. Apply it to work, writing a report. Normally, you write for your manager. You anticipate their preferences. You structure it for their approval. Now, write the same report as if you're the only one who will ever read it. Write it to achieve perfect clarity for yourself, to understand the subject deeply, to make a document that is, in your own judgment, excellent and complete. The care you take now comes from a different place, from integrity to the work itself, not from the anticipated grade. The quality that comes from this is often different. More durable, it's work done for its own sake. This practice shows the seams in your character. It shows where your diligence is genuine and where it's a performance. Where your kindness is innate and where it's a transaction for social credit. It's a mirror held up to your intentions. The reflection can be humbling and liberating. So here's a prompt. Today, pick one routine task: answering emails, making a meal, organizing a drawer, having a conversation. Before you start, consciously adopt the as if invisible mindset. Do this task with the care you would if you knew for certain that no one would ever see it, ever know you did it, ever praise you for it. As you do it, notice the subtle differences in your motivation. Do you feel a sense of freedom, a slight emptiness, a new focus on the task's own qualities? That observation is data. It tells you where you are on the path from performer to sovereign. And in that quiet, unobserved action, you might touch the edge of a freedom that needs no witness. Your legacy isn't the speech they give at your funeral. It's the echo of your character in the lives you touched. The Stoics took this long view, a view across generations. They asked you to shift your concern from the immediate applause to the enduring sculpture of your soul. You're not building a reputation for today's crowd. You're carving a character for eternity. A good reputation might be a pleasant shadow, a shadow cast by a solid object in the right light. But if you spend your life chasing the shadow, you'll never shape the stone. The stone is your character, your virtues, your choices. The shadow is their opinion. Their praise, their fleeting talk, focus on the stone. The shadows will fall where they may. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this. He said, "In the long run, you'll be forgotten. Everyone who praises you now will be gone. So what's left?" He answered his own question. What's left is the content of your character, the quality of your actions, the state of your mind. He told himself to be satisfied with even the smallest progress, if it's real. A legacy isn't a list of accolades to be recited. It's a quiet influence, a pattern of integrity woven into the fabric of your days. It's a well-ordered mind that leaves a wake of calm and reason behind it. You can see the difference in public life. Consider two leaders. The first is a politician obsessed with the daily polls. Every decision is a calculation. Will this please the base? Will it play well on the news? Their legacy becomes a collection of popular positions, often contradictory positions, a weather vane turning with the wind. They may win elections, but they leave behind a legacy of opportunism, not principle. The stone of their character stays rough, unshaped, because all their effort went into managing the shadow. Now consider a figure like Marcus Aurelius himself. As emperor, he faced constant pressure to seek glory through conquest, to bask in the adoration of the masses, to secure his name in grand monuments. Yet his private writings show a man focused on a different legacy, a legacy of duty, of justice, of self-restraint. He saw his role as a service. His goal was to leave the empire and his own soul a little more ordered than he found it. He focused on carving the stone, acting with virtue in the immense responsibility he held. The shadow, his historical reputation, has fluctuated over centuries, but the stone, the example of his philosophical commitment amidst absolute power, has endured. A quiet beacon for 2,000 years, this applies to your own life on a human scale. Think of a teacher. One teacher teaches to the test, focused on high scores that make the school look good. That earn them immediate praise from administrators. Their students may pass, but they leave without a deeper love for learning. Another teacher focuses on igniting curiosity, on building resilience in their students, on treating each child with dignity. The test scores are a byproduct, not the goal. Years later, students may not remember the specific lessons, but they carry the imprint of that teacher's character, their patience, their belief in them. That is the carved stone, that is the legacy. So here's a question. If you were to be remembered for one character trait 100 years from now, what would you want it to be? Not your job title, not your wealth, but a single quality. Would it be your unwavering integrity, your boundless compassion, your relentless courage? Choose one. Now make it immediate. What is one small, concrete action you can take today to build that trait? If it's integrity, it might be keeping a promise to yourself you were tempted to break. If it's compassion, it might be listening to someone without interruption, without judgment. If it's courage, it might be voicing a small, uncomfortable truth. That action, done for its own sake, is a single strike of the chisel on the stone. It has nothing to do with who is watching. It's the slow, patient work of legacy. While others are chasing shadows, you are building something that time itself will struggle to erode. The less you need approval from others, the more you can actually respect them and respect yourself. That's the knot that ties it all together. Freedom from needing approval. It's not about withdrawing. It's not isolation. It's the only real foundation for connection. Because when you don't need something from people, you can finally see them. You can engage with them as they are, not as tools for your own validation. Your relationships change. They become conscious choices, not dependencies. The Stoics talked about a cosmic city, a community of all rational beings. Other people are your fellow citizens, your kin. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this constantly. He reminded himself to deal with people justly, to bear with them gently, to see them as part of a shared whole. But the core of that instruction, he didn't say, seek their favor to feel whole. He said, deal with them justly. The focus is on your action, your virtue in the engagement. Your worth isn't up for a vote in this city. It's a given. Your duty is to interact with justice and kindness. That perspective flips the script. Others aren't sources of validation to be mined. They're fellow travelers to be met with integrity. When you approach from that inner fullness, you're free to offer respect, without needing to barter for it in return. Think of a deep friendship, the kind where silence is comfortable, where you can voice a stark disagreement about a life choice and the bond doesn't tremble. Why? Because the foundation isn't mutual approval seeking, it's mutual respect. Each person is anchored in their own sense of worth. They don't need the other to mirror their choices to feel secure. So when one says, "I don't think that's the right path for you," it can be heard as concern, not condemnation. The friendship isn't a pact to always reflect each other's decisions. It's a space where two sovereign individuals choose to walk alongside one another, offering honest perspective from a place of care, not control. That honesty is a gift. A gift only possible when you've stopped needing the other person to agree with you in order to like yourself. Now contrast that with a relationship built on a fragile exchange of approval. Two people constantly monitoring each other's reactions, laughing a little too hard at jokes, hiding divergent opinions. The unspoken rule is, you must validate me and I will validate you. That feels safe, warm for a while, but it's a contract written on paper that dissolves in the rain of real conflict. When a true difference arises, the whole structure panics. Because to disagree threatens the very currency, the approval that the relationship runs on. It becomes a tense negotiation, not a free exchange. So bring this to your own life. Gently assess one key relationship: a partner, a parent, a close friend. Ask yourself with quiet honesty, is this bond rooted in a need for approval from this person? Do I soften my edges, hide my doubts, amplify my agreement to ensure their continued good opinion of me? Or is it rooted in a mutual respect that allows for difference? That sees the other as a complete person, not a role designed to make me feel complete. If you sense the former, it's not a condemnation, it's a discovery. It shows where you might be trading a piece of your freedom for a feeling of security. The path forward isn't to confront the other person, but to first reclaim that peace within yourself. To build your own self-respect so solidly that you can enter that relationship without need. From that place, you can choose to stay, but now as a free participant. Offering your authentic self, not a performance, and in that offering you invite the possibility of a deeper connection, one that doesn't clip your wings but gives you a sky to share. Freedom isn't about being alone, it's about having a self that doesn't shake. This whole path, it's been a map back to that, drawn by people a long time ago who saw the chains we make. Chains from wanting to be liked. We started by seeing that, how wanting approval is a kind of slavery. You trade what's yours for something outside, for what people think. And that's a currency that changes all the time. Then there was the dichotomy of control, that basic tool for separating what's yours from what isn't. We practiced with that, seeing externals praise, blame, your reputation as indifferent, like weather, just passing by, and your character is the structure it passes by. You stop pleading your case to a jury of strangers. You reclaim the gavel. You hold your own court. The Stoic vision is clear. True freedom isn't rebelling against others. It's mastering your own desires, your aversions, especially that quiet one, the desire to be validated from outside. The tranquility comes from self-sufficiency. Knowing your peace is generated inside, so it can't be taken. Marcus Aurelius, writing alone, said it: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize that and you find strength. That strength is the destination. It's the quiet citadel, not built of stone but of reasoned choice, where you're finally free. So as we end, one question to turn inward. What's one chain of approval you could break today? One small act where you choose your own metric, not the world's applause. If this path toward a freer mind makes sense to you, you could join this community. Subscribe for more on living with intention, with Stoic clarity, and share what you see in the comments. Your story might be the mirror someone else needs to see their own chains start to fall.